Hello, friends. I was Eric here talking with famous people. I want to make a reply here to a comment, and I made a document as well. This video will probably be titled INFP Value Matrix, how INFPs value or something like that. But I want to respond to what this guy says in this comment. Jay Stewart. From my understanding, the metaphorical and value-oriented approaches are simultaneous. I mean, it's probably true that most people who use a metaphorical approach also use a value approach to some extent. It deals with archetypes and incorporates matrices. I believe they are tied to post-Kantian epistemology. That's why Jung may have been interested in Nietzsche as he was. Interestingly enough, Jung and Nietzsche are INFJ, INTJ. So metaphorical value approach must be both an I thing. Well, it definitely is. The metaphorical approach is an I thing. The value approach, well, I'll explain in a second why it's a little different. And there's different ways to approach valuing. So my best guess is that INTJ's FI will side with metaphorical and INFJ's TI with value. This claim resonates. I mean, I think that they'll both side with metaphorical because the tertiary is not going to have that much to impact. It's going to be metaphorical particularist or metaphorical social, depending on if it's INTJ or INFJ. This person is an INFP. I believe that experience epistemology in more of a phenomenological way, say holistically and crudely TE, because I am not savvy or invested in the mechanics like an NI or TI user would. Perhaps this is because INFP's lead function FI is physical. I don't actually care to argue about values because I am my own values. They are physical and absolute, just like hunger strikes and compels you to go and eat. Jung's archetypes are not compatible with phenomenology. The reasons I don't have at hand right now. So this means that INFP is closer to the INTJ epistemological than the INFJ. I disagree with that because NI is the epistemology function. It is the knowing function. So INFJ and INTJ both have the same knowing function. And it's both dominant and it's both universal. My need for TE systemized continues regardless of not being proficient in handling truth or TI. I use metaphor, NI, creativity, and informal logic to design and paint a picture of TE systems, and I would this my epistemology. I can see where values are in matrices, but don't comprehend them well. I could be critical if I needed to, but could not use it constructively or in an affirmative way. My strength is that I know what I manipulate, what kind of logical travesties I could be causing. When I use metaphor and when I design ideas or tend to conclusions, cue INFP's famous indecisiveness. This incentivizes me to overcome a lack of TI with more TE, reading others' philosophy logic. If what I'm saying sounds like gobbledygook, Google papers on the ontology of metaphor and lyrical philosophy. It doesn't sound like gobbledygook at all. I mean, some parts of it seem a little mixed up maybe, but that's fine. Metaphor and similar stuff. First I thought I'd do this. Okay, the thing about metaphor in general is we all use some metaphor. If we want to avoid metaphor entirely, we have to use English prime. English prime is a form of speaking that gets rid of be verbs and linking verbs in general. So that you can't say something is this or is that. You got to say I saw it. Yeah, it's all agent verb object. That's English prime is a way to avoid actually avoid metaphor. So nobody speaks in English prime. Obviously, it'd be too difficult and you'd be too constrained. But anytime we talk about functions as entities, when I say any, favorite, novelty, or something like that, I'm using metaphor. Anytime I talk about functions as things that one has, I'm using metaphor. Anytime I talk about functions as derivative of type somehow, then I'm talking metaphor. Type is a metaphor in a sense. It's saying, well, it's this one down, number 5. Compare against a composite straw type example. So if I talk about the ENTP, I'm talking about some purported mean, right? It's not an actual person, no actual instance of an ENTP. It's the, if you were to average all the ENTPs together, it's that guy or something. But of course, that guy doesn't exist, so it's a metaphor. Archetypes. Archetypes, though, are a much more robust kind of metaphor. Um, when you hear somebody talk about your, the hero and the critical parent and your shadow identity of INTJ and all that kind of stuff, that's where archetype starts becoming. What happens is people forget that it's really what number 2 is, an analogy. So like Socionics calls ENTP Don Quixote. Well, it's an analogy. It's saying, well, that's not really an analogy, but critical parent certainly is, and hero certainly is. It's saying basically that if you want to parse out attentional manners, the one that you have as your base attentional manner is going to be like a hero to you. The one that you have as your 6th slot is going to be like a critical parent to you in some regard. Of course, it's not any of those things because it's not a thing. You are behaving. You are being. And how you be is can be categorized. Different possible ways to be can be categorized, and in fact, they'll have a relational mechanics to them, such that if you prioritize, if you're attending in manner A, for example, you necessarily can't be attending in manner D or whatever. So there's this aspect to it as well. It's difficult to always talk non-metaphorically about it. To always sort of say, instead of saying any values, whatever, to go, well, a person who defaults towards extroverted intuition as an attentional manner, blah, 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 blah. It's sort of cumbersome. Okay, so let's go back over here. So, analogy. I wanted to draw a distinction between 2 different kinds of analogies. So, the deaf fire analogy. The deaf fire analogy says your polar function is like you're deaf, but you don't really realize you're deaf. And you're really super good at reading lips, such that you function perfectly fine and you never really are aware that you're deaf. You've learned some workarounds. When you see a fire truck go by with its lights on, you put your hands over your ears because you see other people do that. Of course, sometimes it doesn't actually have a siren on, and then people think you're weird. Well, that's polar. It's very much like we're deaf or blind. I think deaf is better because you can imagine a world where if you read lips well enough and people always called you from in front of you instead of behind you so you could see their face, that you could go through life unaware that you are deaf almost. You could conceive of it. There's probably better examples. I mean, certainly people go through life unaware they're colorblind, for example, unless they get tested for it. Otherwise, how would they even know they're missing any colors because they've never seen them before? So, okay, let's go here. Oh, the other one, muskets and horses. So a different kind of analogy really is the one where Obama said, you're talking about us having fewer of these kind of weapons and these kind of things, but we also have fewer muskets and horses, so is that a bad thing? He's basically saying, in that instance, he's using an analogous proof to say, a comparable situation to be the analog and to demonstrate that the reasoning behind the first argument being made doesn't hold water, because if we apply the same reasoning to this equivalency, it doesn't hold water there. it's different than what I was trying to do with my analogy, which is more like a metaphor. I mean, the thing is, analogies are always metaphors, but it the teleology matters. It's like, well, what are you trying to accomplish here? With my fire engine metaphor, I'm trying to cause an intuitive understanding of what it means to have a polar function, and to genuinely try to convey how little we understand of our polar function, in a way that perhaps will be more resonant or impactful or informative than just saying you really don't get your polar function. Let's go on to this part here. So, relational descriptions. See, this is the thing. A value matrix can either be a relational description or it can be a behavioral prediction, or it can be a metaphor. It really depends on how you're doing it. If I say, well, any values novelty, that's a metaphor. But if I say a person's dominant function is going to be valued as such, and that's a relational description. And it's different because I'm not saying how you are going to express at all the value of your first function. I'm just saying whatever your first function is, it's going to express as a valuing approach like this. So it's sort of a behavioral prediction, but really it's an ontological prediction. It's saying if you are really an INFP, then this is what your value. This is how you're going to approach. This is how you're going to link values to certain attentional manners. Okay, so now we're back down to the compare against a composite straw type example. This is worth noting here: character versus person. If you view yourself as a character foremost, then this makes a lot of sense. You're going to say, well, I am an example of this kind of character, and I just need to figure out, I'm going to look at all the thieves in the Dungeons and Dragons world, and I'm going to see if I'm a thief. Do I have the same kind of clothes? Do I have it's a sensible enough way to type yourself, frankly, is to read a bunch of type descriptions, except it's a lot more sensible for some people than others. It really depends on what your function stack is, because if you use TI in the second slot or dominant slot, then chances are you're going to be pretty capable of objective self-criticism and of dampening down bias. Whereas if perhaps you use FI as a tool function, you're going to have a really hard time prioritizing the most logical conclusion if you have a preference. And I've seen that in a lot of ESFPs. I don't see it nearly as much in ENFPs, who seem to be perfectly happy to be ENFPs by and large. Regardless, let's go over to the second page and talk about this video's topic, which is INFP slot values. Let me just say about this stuff here that the kind of values that are used in conjunction with metaphor are usually the metaphorical values. So it's like saying, oh, well, this is the legitimization criterion for this function. That would be the kind of value explication you'd expect to see paired with a metaphorical approach, in my opinion. Okay, so INFP slot values. This just goes over the slot values and then talks about it for INFP. So implicit value means it's if you are willing to engage in something, if you think something's worth any of your attention at all, if you're not trying to avoid it or get away from it, then it's going to resonate with FI. And I write here, if you can't evaluate something in terms of preference, significance to you, desire, preciousness, or disposability, appeal, or distaste to you, all those things to you, you will seek to get away and avoid the situation. Your instrumental value is NE, and you use this function most of the time and recognize just how useful it can be, but don't actually value it much per se. You value that others ideate appropriately, but ultimately don't care about the ideational process for its own sake. Rather, NE matters to you only insofar as it produces in yourself mostly, SI, or in others mostly, FE gains. So we tend to value our third and fifth function as areas where we can get paid, so to speak. Much more our third, but still somewhat our fifth as well. Absolute value, SI. This is your scorecard currency for yourself. SI tertiary means you as an INFP seek a self-built up experience chunks. You'd like to construct a clean, authentic ontology, avoiding failure on your permanent record as much as possible. You also take great satisfaction in steady self-care, sensual pleasures like baths and food, maintaining routines, and staying on top of your business. It doesn't mean that those things are especially easy for you, just that you find them rewarding and fulfilling. So, okay, in this instance, we're talking about something that's kind of like horoscopy, but I would say it's the difference is this. What this purports to do is provide you some analysis about things that are likely to strike a chord with you. When I say like your third slot's SI, you want this blah 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 blah. Probably that'll hit home. Probably you'll be like, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Regardless, because you may not have heard your nature and tendencies and habits described quite that way before, even if it doesn't quite strike the mark, it's still going to provide you a lot of fodder for forward thinking. So, to the extent that you go like, well, that's not me, then you may end up concluding something else or whatever, But the point is, it's not disputable that we can taxonomy attentional manners. The only thing that is really disputable is what to do with it and whether your taxonomy is any good. The thing is, a lot of people build taxonomies around cognitive functions that are sloppy and just a complete mess and reflective of a lack of understanding. If you have a good taxonomy and you understand the things definitionally in this way and that way and the other way, then you'll begin to put together the links, the way that these various things in life that might seem disparate at first, you start to recognize, oh, this is just another instance of my being FE scared or FE wary. Because sometimes I get like, oh, I don't want to go ask that person because every once in a while I still do that. And I just remember, oh, well, it's just you being tertiary FE again. Understanding how you get paid and understanding it in those terms is something that can really make you experience life more fully and richly and self-awaredly. There's all kinds of shit I didn't understand at all before I started learning about cognitive functions that I understand much, much better now. And dealing with other people in the world, for sure. I mean, for no other reason, I've got simple explanations to give to Kimberly. Why is he like that? Oh, he's got polar FE. That's why he's like that. No, he's not evil. I know it makes you angry with your tool function. Okay. You also take great satisfaction, steady self-care, sensual pleasures like baths and food, maintaining routines, staying on top of your business. This doesn't mean that those things are easy for you, just that you find them rewarding and fulfilling. So FE is not especially easy for me, but I find it rewarding and fulfilling. Seeking value, TE. Your seeking value is delegatory in the sense that you'd like to delegate it. Ultimately, you seek your dual to provide an environment conducive to the successful implementation of TE into your life. Mostly you'd like to delegate this. However, when it's not forced upon you and you aren't being judged or harried about it, you can get satisfaction from this slot. You begrudgingly recognize the value of this, and you less begrudgingly recognize your own weakness at it. This is a spot where if you're going to make self-deprecating jokes, you're probably a decent chance you'll make them about this. Your fifth slot is your ontological value. It's how you legitimize others. So yours is FE, which means if people have bad FE, or they're rude or inconsiderate enough, then you'll dismiss them as bad or unworthy, or just simply avoid them. So others who don't meet basic competency minimums here will be dismissed by you as bad or unworthy. However, it's a binary thing. You don't judge with this carefully, just pass-fail. You assume, correctly for the most part, that your own FE is never a problem. FI DOMs have very good FE, very, very strong FE. They just ignore it. And that doesn't hurt them because they're sort of unconsciously so linked to feelings with their FI dominant function that they get FE just fine, almost reflexively, like without a lot of thought about it. So, yeah. Let's go to the next one. Countervalued, NI, conflicting priorities. The reason your 6 slot's countervalued is because it conflicts with your tool function in terms of its priorities, what it thinks ought to be prioritized, or what you think ought to be prioritized because you're using this counter. Because you're using any of the tool function, you think any style approach should be prioritized. But NI often cuts NE off at the legs and says, no, we stop ideating. Now we come to the single truth. But it says here, your tool function runs afoul of your 6 slots. Since you use creativity, you countervalue NI. Distillation in the single way seem to you to ignore the uniqueness of each individual and to ignore the fact that words and rules can't account for the myriad specifics that inform any actual instance. Account for. Any actual instance. Well, then I make another line though. Actual. Well, that's okay. 7. Confused, handicapped. SE. Incapable of upholding these values in a purposeful way. You may or may not uphold them on any given occasion. And what it means to uphold a value is it means to know what it means to prioritize something appropriately. So if I'm upholding a TI value, for example, I might admit I'm wrong. If I'm upholding an FI value, I might be unwilling to budge about something because it's extremely important to me. If I uphold an SE value, I might not think about it and just say fuck it and go over and talk to that chick and not worry about, if I'm gonna get shut down or whatever, assuming I was single. The point is, that's what it means to uphold those values. And we uphold them in our speech, we uphold them in our actions, we uphold them in our choices, or we prefer an alternate value. Sometimes we don't uphold it. I don't know what the opposite of uphold is. Down drop. We down drop. Instead of upholding, we down drop. Certain values. So let's go back to the document here. And that's when I do the fire truck analogy. This function you understand less well than almost everybody else. We all develop workarounds through our polar. Sometimes the workarounds are quite effective when we forget that we are deaf and that putting our hands over our ears when a fire truck goes by only usually makes sense. If the sirens are not on, the hearing folk will think we are strange. So this happens to me with FI sometimes. Talking to people in the room, we're talking to Kimberly or whatever, and I'll go, that's my feelings. Go, that's not your feelings. You don't even know what you're talking about. I don't know. I'll go, okay, well, I guess I don't know what I'm talking about. I know this, that if I make decisions with my feelings, shit come out bad. Like if I get too mad or if I'm sad and decide to just, I don't know. I don't even know what it means to make decisions with your feelings. Obviously, it means you assess how much you like a thing or prefer it or something, but I don't know. I mean, I know what I don't like if I don't like something, you know. It's like if something's really something I don't like, then I'll want to get away from it or something. Like I don't like it. For example, there was an episode of Dr. Phil on that I didn't like. I didn't want to watch it. Kimberly had the TV on, and when she went in the other room, I turned off the TV because I didn't want to hear it anymore. I didn't like it. I knew I didn't like it, but I didn't really think about the fact that I didn't like it. I just was like, it's so loud, and they're talking about child abuse. I don't like to hear that shit. It's fucking depressing. I've got so much bongers on my hands right now. Well, because I tried to go to the weed store last night, but I guess it closes at 11. I went at like 11:30. It was closed, so couldn't get any weed. So what have I been doing? I've been smoking resin, of course, until it opens this morning. Okay, is there anything else on this document? Oh yeah, the last one. Balanced, resentful. Your 8th slot function, if you're an INFP, is TI. This is a work function, your 8th slot, mostly, and somewhat countervalued consciously, and somewhat valued unconsciously. You're much more likely to criticize somebody for their TI stuff than you are to celebrate it. Although you'll feel pretty good when you succeed in TI, but it's also you don't fixate on it. This function you mostly use when and where appropriate. From an SI perspective, you use it ideally. In other words, from a human perspective as opposed to a character perspective. NI perspective like a character. You see yourself as a character. SI, you see yourself as a person. From an SI perspective, you use it ideally as you are neither obsessed nor appalled by it, are better at it than you think, and also see when not to use it. You dislike evil manifests through this function more than other manners of evil. This is partially why INFP is ENTP's supervisor. In other words, you put a check on TI, you're like, okay, now you're just using it to abuse people by being contrary and difficult. And you're making somebody feel bad, and shame on you, ENTP. That's what INFP will do. Additionally, however, they won't say that, though. They just give you a look and you feel bad. Additionally, however, to the extent that you feel insecure about aspects of yourself, it's likely to link to this function. Or jealous. So, I don't feel like I'm jealous of ESTPs, but I do still feel a little insecure about certain kinds of, like, manly stuff. If I were single, I'd feel insecure about picking up chicks. Maybe not anymore, but I'd still feel insecure about it. I don't know. That's pretty good to me, probably, because I was very late blooming in the scoring chicks department, and internalized a lot of negative self-narratives about that, about how just absolutely disgusting I am to all women, and how it would be an insult to any woman for me to even consider, trying to touch her or anything like that. Obviously, she's not interested in me. There are other people in the world, and until there are no other men in the world, then obviously no woman that I would like to be with would possibly be interested in me. That's what I used to think a long time ago. But I don't really think that anymore. It doesn't matter anymore because I'm in a relationship, and I'm going to be in this relationship for the rest of my life. I'm pretty damn sure. And unless she dies, and if she dies unexpectedly, I'm not going to die. No. Unexpectedly, no. I will die expectedly eventually. I will expect my death when I hit about 95. In the meantime, I've got bong resin to keep me young and vibrant. I went to the symphony last night. Yeah, I got these clients who play in the LA Philharmonic. Both of them do. The mom and the dad, they both play in the LA Philharmonic. Although last night only the dad was playing for some reason. I don't know. The mom had the night off or something. They didn't need another viola. Anyway, pretty cool. We went to a Disney concert hall. I'd never been there before. I'd never been inside of it. And we had great seats. The seats that we were sitting in, if we had to buy them, would cost $117 a piece. But my clients gave them to me. So, it was pretty damn cool for about half an hour. We stayed for the whole Tchaikovsky symphony. We skipped the first half, which was some kind of... Well, I mean, my client said the first half was going to be boring. And we didn't want to rush our asses down there and see all that shit anyway. So we just wanted to see... I just wanted to see, anyway, some classical music, Tchaikovsky, We saw a Tchaikovsky symphony. I think Kim just wanted to get dressed up and go downtown. So, and we had shabu, is that what it's called? Something like that? It's some Japanese food. It's like you put it in a soup and then you put it out of the soup and you eat it. I don't know. It was a fun place, though. It was like this hopping, urban, exciting kind of place where filled with young professionals and drinking and stuff like that. So that was kind of fun eating there. And then, yeah, we got there a little before intermission, and I was surprised by how good the seats were. We were the second level up, but like right over the orchestra, and there were at least, I think there was 3 levels above us. There was 1 level below us, so that's pretty good seats. It's not down on the floor in the orchestra section. It was pretty damn good. And I was really struck by the dynamics. See, that's the thing. Classical music, the whole symphony thing, it's like, well, what would you do if you didn't have EQ and effects and all the shit that we do to make audiophile sound crispity? Or what do we do? We get all the different frequencies, try to manage the frequency ranges, try to have stuff at the bottom and a little bit higher, and you try to get the levels right, and you try to preserve dynamics without things getting too quiet, and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's exactly what a fucking orchestra is. It's doing that without any electricity. So instead of kicking a pedal and changing the sound of your instrument, they got violins, violas, cellos, basses on strings. They got clarinets, oboes, bassoons, 1 piccolo player. You only need 1 because it cuts right through everything. They have three flautists. One of the flautists switches between piccolo and flute. They had a shit ton of violins and violas. I don't know, a lot of them. Maybe like 10 of each or something. Okay, so I said I'm trying to go through all the instruments. They also had a trumpet, trombone, French horn, and I think there was a saxophone at one point, but it may have been a French horn that he was playing. It sounded like a saxophone, and when I looked over to that spot, he was putting it down. And then he picked up a French horn, though, so I think he did have a saxophone briefly. And I know they didn't have saxophone in classical music, but regardless, it may have been something else. It may have been like a, I don't know, some sort of like, I don't know, trumpet. Oh, there was trumpets. There was trumpets, trombones, and one tuba, French horn. Those are the brass. And okay, yeah, and then there was timpani, a timpani player. There was a big drum player, this big ass brown drum that was put like a kick drum, like it was put on its side like a kick drum, and the guy, but instead of using a pedal, he hit it with these two mouths, like boom, 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 boom. And then the guy who had the easiest job by far in the whole orchestra, he was the cymbals and gong guy. So I think he hit the cymbals 3 times, and I remember him hitting the gong once, and the whole rest of the time he was just sitting there. He may have hit the gong more than once, but I don't remember him. I was really watching him because I was like, at first I thought the only thing he did was hit the gong because I didn't see the cymbals at first. And I was like, when is he gonna hit that gong? Like, is he just gonna sit there the whole show and then just hit it once and then that's his whole job? Does he get paid as much as the other guys in the orchestra? I don't think he should get paid as much because he doesn't really do much except just sit there. Also, the big kick drum guy doesn't do much. He played the kick drum like a couple of times. It's not a kick drum, I'm sure. I don't know what they call that big brown drum. Is there anything else I'm forgetting about? I think that's everything. Oh, there's a conductor. Conductor, violins, violas, cellos, bass. And then the woodwinds, there were bassoons, oboes, clarinets, flute, piccolo. And then brass, there was French horn, trombone, trumpet, tuba. And percussion, there was cymbals, gong, timpani, and big round brown drum. It's interesting. Really interesting seeing it. And, what you get when you go to the symphony. I actually want to make a separate video about this because I have some footage from it. But what you get when you go to the symphony, one thing you get is accomplishment. These are highly accomplished musicians and they're all playing shit perfectly as they can. I mean, I actually did catch one of the flutists was late on a couple of things, like 0.050 seconds probably or something, like half a tenth a second. Well, I can hear it, but it's because I listen to timey shit and music I'm making all the time. I'm always listening for things being timed right. So I'm sure nobody else picked up on it probably, or very few other people in the place picked up on it. Some other people probably did too, but it's like you really got to be listening hard and paying a lot of attention to catch something like that in a symphony, because there's a lot of shit going on. It's easy to kind of bury your mistakes in the all the runs. It's like it's just full of runs, up and down, up and down, and up and down, like. Um, but I gotta say, like the end of the second to last movement, when it got all like, it got all big and bum, 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 yeah, big. I can't even remember the melody of it, but it was pretty stirring. It was pretty damn stirring, pretty impressive. Um, but yeah, there was one too many movements in that symphony. I found myself thinking like, you know, it's not that great. A symphony. I mean, the whole thing, the whole production is that great, right? Like the fact that you got all these people playing it so perfectly, and you got all these counterpoint things going on musically, and blah, blah, blah. The whole thing all put together, the experience, it's pretty great. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go do it again, though, really, but it's pretty great and pretty impressive example of human achievement. Um, that they were able to get so much dynamics, the full frequency range, and just such like epicness before electricity by making all these different instruments. I came together like 50 people to sit around and play music like that. It's it's so much more impressive than anything we do nowadays. I mean, obviously, classical music people still do that. But I'm saying like it, without any technology, they the olden days people they put that shit together. They're like, well, you know, we don't have any electricity, we don't got any amps, we don't got any EQs, we don't got any effects pedals, we don't got any mics. Well, how's everybody gonna hear you? Well, obviously we get like 30 people singing at the same time, they'll hear us. Okay, well let's get 30 people and sing at the same time then. How are they going to hear the violins? Well, let's get 15 of them. We're going to need at least that many anyway, because there's kind of like, you know, there's this violin part, then there's that violin part, then there's violas too, because they're a little deeper. Yeah. We'll also need to get the cellos in there too. This is kind of a big operation for playing a song, don't you think? Yeah, but we really want to play this song. It's kind of an unnecessarily complicated song, don't you think? Yeah. That's why we need all these people. I mean, it's, you gotta think kind of like, it must have to do with royalty in churches and stuff. That the world was such that it was conducive to putting on big things like that. I mean, you might say it is still now, but it's really not. It's like, if it didn't already exist and have all this associated stuff alongside it, like, you know, classical music doesn't have a huge following or anything, but people who go watch it and care about it tend to be rich. So that's gonna help your earnability, I guess. I totally got off topic on this at the end of this video talking about my going to the symphony last night. Yeah, my client's a viola player. Viola. Not a violin. Looks like a violin, but it's not. 8:15, huh? Well, that means it's time for me to stop this video. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.